So now this was the turning point for Isa alayhi salam's ministry. Because now, and for those who have read the Sirah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the Sirah which is very in-depth by Imam Anwar al-Awlaki rahmatullahi alayhi, you can read it where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh also were doing the same thing before even the prophethood, where they would go and help and stand up for the poor, people who were downtrodden, people whose haqq was taken by the wealthy. They would go back and get the property, papers and deeds and things like that were usurped by force and give it back to the poor. And there's a lot about the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ which has been withheld, and the reason being because the powers that be don't want Muslims to rise up. They don't want you to rise up against the oppressive tyranny of the wealthy. So as Isa alayhi salam came and knocked on their door, they're surprised. What's going on? Who's here at this time of night? We're doing our dirty planning. But of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's angels had already notified Isa alayhi salam of what's happening, right? So, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the Quran when He says, فَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ مَاكِرِينَ. It says, they plan. And the word makar, right? When you do a makar in Arabic, the translation is when you make a whisper, when you speak to somebody and you're kind of whispering a plan. You don't want other people to hear it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they silently whisper amongst each other, trying to make plans. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also plans. And Allah is the best of planners. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He hears them and they're planning, but they don't hear Allah's plans. So Isa alayhi salam, he comes to them. He walks into this Bayt al-Maqdis with some of his companions. And he tells the people, he tells these scholars, he says, what's going on here? You people have all this wealth accumulated in your masjid, in your treasuries. You have so many different imams, administrators, that are completely unnecessary. You have all these expenditures and all this money that you keep asking for from the people. Give us money, we need to maintain the masjid and so forth and so on. And you keep asking and you keep hoarding them in your treasuries. And your imams are living the good life, wealthy, have nice homes, they have money, while your common follower is suffering and oftentimes cannot even give zakat. And then to add insult to injury, he said, you have the audacity to build inside the masjid businesses. So what they were doing was they were trading money. They were money traders. So you would bring in some money and then the money would trade hands, and it was basically almost, you could say, like a bank. So they had opened some sort of banks inside the masjid, Bayt al-Maqdis. Right? And so Isa alayhi salam is really upset. Like, man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made riba haram. And you people are now charging riba, not only with the audacity, and this is funny because it reminds me of here in the United States when I've been to a few masjids, the big masjids, and you'll see these guidance residential finance departments and companies that stand outside the masjid, and the imam will even announce it. These guidance residential company that's mortgaging homes for you, they'll buy homes for you, pay a mortgage. They're standing outside to give you information and so forth, so on. So what they were doing was that they were giving loans to people that were non-Jewish, and because it was against their religion to give to Jewish people loans, but they had gone to the point to where they were giving Jewish people loans, but people who were not of their same social economic class. So Isa alayhi salam said, now you have the audacity to not only make haram into halal, because it's in the Old Testament, the Bible, to deal with riba, to deal with interest for loans in any form. is haram. In fact, in Europe, up until about 300 years ago, dealing with riba, with interest, was completely banned. So he says, not only do you have the audacity to make haram into halal, but you're doing it inside the middle of Bayt al-Maqdis. You're doing it right here. This is our Kaaba. So, and this is a story mentioned in the Bible, in historical records, where he overthrows the tables of the bankers and takes out a stick and starts whipping them with it. So, you know, when they try to make Isa alayhi salam's portrayal, the Christians, they make him seem like almost like a hippie. A hippie, someone, you know, long hair, and they just, you know, hold up peace signs. Everything's peace. No, we don't want to fight. And but if you actually look into it, Isa alayhi salam himself, in their own books, has said, Allah did not send me here for peace, but He sent me here as a sword. Why? Because the corruption, the bid'ah had become so great that now speaking peacefully did not make any difference in these people's hearts. Their hearts of the leadership of the Muslims of the time had become so dark in the love of dunya that speaking to them alone was not going to change them. So he had to do it by force. So after this scenario, when he kicked all these imams out of Bayt al-Maqdis, because now, you know, he's given prophethood and he's an alim, and a lot of his companions were students of knowledge with him. They weren't just average people that he picked up and said, hey guys, let's go. They were all ulama. They were students of knowledge. Talibul ilm. So they all went in there, kicked out these people, and they set things back in order in Bayt al-Maqdis. Now, Isa alayhi salam had been given prophethood, so now he was spreading the khair over the course of the next years. One of his miracles was that whenever people were sick, when he would touch them, they would be healed. So if somebody had leprosy, he would touch them, they would become healed. If somebody was blind, and he would rub his hand over their eyes, and he would say, by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fact, it's even in their own book itself, where he would say with the help of the Creator or God, then he would rub his hands over their eyes, and they would be healed. And he would say, this is from the One, this is not from me, I'm not the one doing these things. So his popularity started growing when what happened? When he stood up, right, and made change with his hands. It didn't just happen when he was speaking out against the wrong, because the people didn't want to change. The ulama and the masjids, they didn't want to change. So he forced them out, basically overthrew them and forced them out of the masjid and made change. Now, as time progressed, more and more people were coming to Islam. In the time of the Prophet Isa alayhi salam, more and more people were coming to Islam. And then one of the biggest miracles, as we know, from Surah Al-Ma'idah, the table spread, when some of the Muslims, because they were still weak in Iman, so they asked him for a miracle. He had told the followers, we're going to go into the desert, and we're going to fast for 30 days, something that's mentioned in their book. So we're going to fast for 30 days, and then we're going to, have our food and so forth and so on, but not 30 days consecutively, just fast every day, 30 days. And this is something that's in-depth written in the Bible, which even a lot of scholars have now said that the month that they speak about is the month of Ramadan and so forth. But that's another subject altogether. So they said, can you bring down a spread of food for us? So he said, he did dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them, and this is in the Quran, we will bring down for you food from the sky as a miracle to show all of you. These are thousands and thousands of people who want to learn about Islam. They want their iman strengthened. But he said, if after this, anyone who disbelieves, we will give them a punishment like no one on earth has been punished before. And so the food came down, and Isa alayhi salam offered it, but the munafiqeen were afraid that maybe it's poison, maybe this is magic, so they refused to take it.